The Real World Austin cast has arrived, and no one seems to like them. Plus, a whole cast of fresh meat are here to try their luck in the challenge. Coral and Evan absolutely dominate until they physically can't do so any longer. Tina and Kenny are a match made in heaven. Wes yells at his partner and his girlfriend. The angel that is Diem Brown begins her challenge journey. And TJ has these folks swimming with sharks, running 10 miles on a beach and diving deep down into the ocean's depths. This man has lost it. It's the challenge. Fresh meat, full season rewatch and recap coming at you right now. What up, my fellow challenge lovers? Welcome to The Challenge Historian, where we dive deep into all things the challenge, past, present, or future, if it's happening in the challenge universe, and we are here to document it. I am your host and dedicated challenge historian, Jacob Hollabaugh. Thank you so very, very much for being here with me today. On today's podcast, the 2022 Challenge Series Rewatch rolls along into season number 12, Fresh Meat. One of my favorite seasons of all time, just subjectively favorite, maybe my favorite theme and or sub-franchise, the Fresh Meat 1 and 2, just one of the absolute favorites of all time here. So I'm very excited to talk about this one with you, and there is a lot to cover. This is a groundbreaking season in many ways for the challenge. This season is an absolutely kick-ass one, objectively, not just my favorite, but is objectively an absolutely kick-ass season of this show. So we've got a lot to get to. We will use the same agenda we've been doing for all of the Rewatch series, which, if you haven't been following along, if you're new to the show, this is season 12 we're covering today, which means we've covered seasons 1 through 11. So feel free, go back, listen to all those, any of them that you've missed. Other quick programming notes: we will continue our Challenge USA coverage this week. That episode 3 recap will be out super late Wednesday night. It'll be there right away Thursday morning in your feeds, ready to go right after you've watched the episode the night before. And then this series, this rewatch series, will continue sometime next week, possibly even this Friday, but we might push it a full week between until next Monday. But The Duel is the next season, another massive, massive season in the history of the show. So a lot to cover there, a lot coming as always. Hit that follow, hit that subscribe button. Follow us over on Instagram at Challenge Historian if you want to get in touch or get more challenge content related to these seasons and everything else challenge related. With that, let's go ahead and dive on in. Let's start things off diving into season 12, Fresh Meat, the same way we always do. Let's talk the state of the challenge, some of the basics, all the high level stuff about this wonderful, kick-ass, amazing season. We start things off, we ease our way into the waters here with the state of the challenge at the time, which really hasn't changed much with from what we've talked about the last couple seasons of the show. The challenge is just completely and utterly in a groove right at this point. It's 2006. They're still, going strong on the 2 a year, if not kind of 2 1/3, 2 1/4. They're, it's not an exact 12-month schedule. They're kind of on like an 10.5 to 11-month schedule. So we're getting some, the overlap years and things like that. But this one airs all, in the summer, fall of 2006 and is shot, a few months prior to that, and the show is totally in its groove, and it's starting to take some chances. It's starting to flex its muscle a little bit. It is not only, been around for more than, 10 seasons. It's not just this established thing, but it's so established, it's so dominant that they can flex their muscles a little bit. And, this season, we're going to talk about the evolutions here in a moment, but, for the biggest thing being, they're willing to say, hey, we've still got this great stable of stars. We're, still got more people, new people we can bring into this, but let's just go ahead and find 12 brand new people off the street. Let's see if we can pull that off and make stars out of them, which they would do very, very well. So definitely a big flex for them. The challenge is, is riding high. It is absolutely as dominant as it's been and probably ever will really be. That's a little bit arguable, but it's definitely at its apex for sure and staying there for quite a while, as is the Real World. The Real World is now just the singular feeder system to the challenge at this time. Obviously, with this season, though, again, the fresh meat concept being kind of a secondary feeder system, but the Real World still holding strong at its apex, absolute power position. Obviously, this season brings in the Austin cast, where it's filming or airing right alongside of Real World Key West, which is a massive season. So for so many reasons, so Real World couldn't be hotter. Has been burning hot for 5, 6, 7 years at this point. It is just the biggest thing MTV has going, and one of the biggest things television has going in general, genre specific or not. Road Rules still dead at this point. We're a year out from the ill-fated attempted revival of Road Rules, but at this point, it is completely dead. And elsewhere in the reality competition world, it should be noted, Survivor is going strong, also on their 12th season, basically aired within a month or two of each other, their 12th season with this 12th season of the challenge. And Survivor at this time remains one of the biggest shows on television, literally out of any possible show. It is, network shows are dominant at this point in time in 2006, but Survivor is one of those. It's averaging 16 million viewers in its 12th season, which, down from its 20 plus million for a few seasons there. But Survivor is still one of the biggest things in the world of television in general, which is helping boost other reality competition shows, and certainly the challenge, as, others would say. Big Brother, Amazing Race, maybe around this time were a little more known or challenging the throne just because of, again, the network versus MTV. But you know how my feelings on this. I'm shouting out Survivor for a reason. It deserves it. Survivor and the challenge for me always will be in a class of their own. Amazing Race, Big Brother, a half step below, as those are the big four, but it's really kind of a big two and a second two in my book. So that's where the challenge is at. Making stars, flexing his muscle, saying we can bring people off the street and continue doing the same thing, as they would prove to do. Let's talk the basics of the season. Let's get into now just this season. Fresh Meat, season number 12, aired from May 29th to September 11th, 2006. It was filmed in Mayacum, Australia. They seem to be all over Australia. I'd love to maybe message a couple cast members that were on this season and find out. I know they travel quite a bit, especially in some of the early seasons, for how far the house to the daily challenges or the eliminations, things like that would be. But this one, they kind of have 3 locations throughout wherever they are that then become the 3 locations where they have an exile set up. But there's kind of the combine field that turns into where they do 3 or 4 daily challenges, and it has an exile right off the side of it, and a few others. But it seems like they travel really far from where the house is to where the other stuff is. But it's in Australia. It's in Mayacum as the listed city or established place that it revolves around. TJ Lavin is back as host, his second season of what would come to be, many forever seasons long. Love TJ Lavin. There is 16 episodes this season, plus a reunion special. It is the first time I have noticed a major error on the Wikipedia site for the challenge, where it for some reason says 19 total episodes, and I'm not sure where they're getting the extra 2, if there's 2 specials or reunion bonuses or shit they should have shown or something like that I'm not finding, I'm not seeing anywhere out in the world. Please, someone let me know, because I would love to watch anything bonus challenge, but specifically this season, bonus this season, would love that. So if you know why some places list 19 episodes when I'm only finding 16 in a reunion, you let me know. And then, of course, there are 24 cast members this season, down a touch. It's been back and forth at this point from when it really vaulted up way back in season 5 to 32 and then 36. We've been a little back and forth. We had 20, 36, 20, 32, now 24. Let's read who those 24 folks are for you in order by team. We've got, well, actually, let's go with the alumni first and then the fresh meat after that. That makes it a little easier. On the alumni side, 12 of them. We got Darrell from Campus Crawl, Tina from South Pacific, Wes from Real World Austin, Derrick from Extreme, Theo from Velocity Tour, Shane from Campus Crawl, Coral from Back to New York, Katie from The Quest, Tanya from Chicago, and then Johanna, Melinda, and Danny, also from the Real World Austin. On the fresh meat side, 12 folks, brand new, never had been on reality television before. That's Aviv, Kenny, Casey, Diem, Shonda, Lynette, Evan, Eric, Big Easy, Banks, Johnny, Jesse, Ryan, and Evelyn. So we've got 24 cast members, a little bit on the smaller side, but that is because the game is way different and we've got a huge format shift, and that leads us right into the evolutions, the first, the history, all of the first of its kind stuff that took place this season. And the obvious one, the one that has to be started with, is that this season is a partner season. You thought I was going to start with the fresh meat. No, that'll be second. First and foremost, it's a partner season, and that is a massive shift that would come to be. There's no standard for individual versus partners at this point in the modern era of the challenge. But when I personally think of the challenge, and without running the numbers, I think when we look back, just as many seasons have partners as, do teams or individuals. Partners feels like the base kind of formula of the challenge these days. And this is the first time we ever got it. The first time they went away from two large teams and brought it into pairings, which completely and utterly changed how the game was played in so many ways. But it was so great, and it's an evolution that sticks with the game for a long time to come. As we said, it's the best. When you think of some of the best seasons of all time, aside from a couple of these early ones we've already done on the Rewatch series, a lot of the ones you're going to think of probably revolve around partners as the base format of the season. The second thing then, that probably the actual most obvious, is fresh meter here. This is the first time ever we have people that are not from the real world or the road rules. And not only that, they're not from any show at all. They're just straight off the streets, either fans of the show or people that, wanted to be on the show. A lot of these people we would find out after the fact, had auditioned for the real world maybe at some point and were brought in as fresh meat instead, or possibly some people that auditioned for this that didn't quite make this season or couldn't make this season, then ended up on the real world afterwards. I'm thinking specifically of John A., who's one of many I've heard this story from, but I think hers was related to Fresh Meat 2. That would make way more sense with the timing of her season, but they have a huge cast, and they're only now pulling into the real world. They don't have the road rules to do as well. And so this fresh meat, worked as a good way for them to say, we've got way more than, the 7 people we're putting in a real world house. We've got way more than 7 good candidates here coming through the casting process. What if we found a way to throw another 12 of them just straight into the challenge instead of having to, go through another show or create some other feeder system show? So we've got fresh meat. That was a huge, huge deal. It would be, another 7 seasons till we did Fresh Meat 2, and we would do the same concept again. And I don't remember off the top of my head the first season that ever allowed any, Are You the One, and then other shows after that. But it was a long, long, long time before any non-real world road rules players come into the challenge world, except for the fresh meat on this season and the follow-up 7 seasons later. So that's a huge evolution, a huge first, history being made. The third one then, we've got Exile now. Instead of eliminations, we've got Exile. Way different. Kind of. I guess I shouldn't say way different, but obviously a massive change up from, we've had a few seasons now, 3 or 4, with eliminations in them. We're sending people home. We've had a couple seasons send people home without an elimination, the Battle of the Sexes season, but we're sending people home, and this time we're changing it up. Instead of one-on-one matchups, it's 2-on-2 because of the partner setting, and instead of 2-on-2 in a bunch of random games that you don't know until you get there and everyone else is watching, this one no one gets to watch, and it's essentially I shouldn't even say a mini final, because up until they eventually run this season's final, what they do in Exile in this season is basically as difficult and as long as any final almost that's been run to this point in challenge history. So they're almost making them do, a version of a final from the previous seasons in Exile. It's way different. It's a very, very interesting twist. We will talk more about that later on in the podcast, but it's a huge, huge change for the show. Fourth thing, then, this one, not so much an evolution, but an unfortunate first that takes place this season, is that is for the first time ever, we have two individuals get disqualified due to injuries. Evan and Coral head home this season. It's a major storyline we will discuss when we get to that portion of the podcast, but it is the very first one. It took 12 seasons in until someone got hurt to the effect of having to be eliminated from the game. And in this instance, they definitely did not want to go home either, which is crazy. And again, we'll talk about that more in a minute. But the fifth and final, then, big kind of history being made. We already alluded to it when saying the Exiles were basically previous finals. This final then became the new standard bearer. This was a 10-mile, or they say 10 miles on the beach long final with 6 checkpoints along the way, 2 of which are puzzles, which you can either have to carry weight or not carry weight. They all end up carrying weight for at least part of it. Most of them end up carrying a bunch of weight a bunch of the time. And it is the first true endurance event. I mean, 10 miles is a real endurance event, especially carrying weight, doing stuff along the way. And it's hard to tell, it's not hard to tell. I believe it's the 10 miles just based on the fact that when Darrell and Aviv finish, it is still very much light out. And when the other two teams finish, it is pitch black. It has clearly been dark for a while. There is a massive gap between when those teams finish, which would allude to how big of a distance there could possibly be to cover. But it's always hard to tell because the final mission in screen time, we see about 12 minutes worth of screen time. So we're like, oh, this isn't that long. They seem to be getting from one checkpoint to the other really, really quick. And that's just because they have 12 minutes to tell this story that probably, took 5-6 hours or whatever it took in real time. So that was a huge change and obviously an evolution that would only continue to grow and evolve bigger, badder, scarier, harder from this point out. But this feels like a true massive step forward where there's been a couple small steps forward before. This one feels like the next big step of like, all right, we've made these finals what they are. Now, why don't we double it up? Why don't we make it twice as long as anything we've done before? That's what they got. And then finally, let's touch on a couple stats because there was some history made on the statistical front this season. The first one, outside of an individual statistics, just for the show in general, I haven't been necessarily keeping you up to date on previous seasons, but I will now. This season saw the 50th ever elimination round. We are at the end of the season. We've had 52 eliminations ever in the history of the show. So we crossed that 50 eliminations barrier, which is a big milestone. The end of this season, we're at 171 episodes, not counting reunions or specials of any kind, just regular episodes of the show, and 147 daily challenges competed. So we're starting to really rack up numbers and really show, it's not just 12 seasons in, but there's been a lot that's went down. And on the statistical front, some history, big time history made on this season. It starts with Darrell, of course. Darrell becomes the 4-time champion, the 4x4 champ. Darrell Taylor, 4-time champion, sets the new record. He was tied prior to this at 3 with Veronica. He breaks that. He's now the 4-time champion. He is also a 4-time finalist, which ties him with Veronica, Coral, and The Miz for the most all-time at this point in time. And it also, this win in that $125,000 that came with it, vaults him up to first place in the money list with $240,000+ to his name in those 4 seasons. Second place is Mike The Miz at $129,000. So Darrell at this point in time has basically made exactly double what anyone else has ever made in the history of this show. He is the undisputed king of the challenge at this point. And it's not even close. And, retroactively now, 37 seasons in, plus all the others and stuff, when we're talking about the greatest of all times, we mention Darrell's name because of the 4x4 champion. And maybe, that has waned over the years and these seasons look a little different in comparison to seasons to come. But at this point in time, Darrell is the undisputed king of this show. He has not been beat. He seemingly cannot be beat. The other big historical stat made, Wes and Casey, 5 elimination wins on this season, ties them for both the most ever in a single season with Sarah Grayson of the Gauntlet fame, which is still a record that stands today, but also at the time, the 5 eliminations total. That's the most wins total anyone has at this point in time. And Wes would obviously go on to win a bunch more and be in the running for that record, years down the road. But the 5 eliminations win was a huge, huge thing, a huge mile marker. And then finally, just to round up some kind of total stats where the show is at in general, again, on the personnel front, after the end of this season, 48 people have now won a challenge championship, with Aviv being the 48th member of that club. 82 people have now made a final as of this season, and 30 people have felt what it's like to win an elimination round. So that is where your stats stand. That is the history made, the evolutions, the high-level view of when this show happened, what was going on in the world of the show, and the evolutions in history it's made. With that, let's dive a little bit deeper. Let's get into actually talking about some of the biggest storylines and topics from this wonderful season. Storylines of the season, there were so many this season. This season was one of the best ever at the specific thing of there's a bunch of storylines, kind of one after the other. There is, to some degree, there's kind of, overarching full season long arcs, but it's just so well done, not just, from the editing and the storytelling side of it, but the cast, just how it breaks down of, this is kind of going on early, this in the middle, this late, and just makes for a really entertaining and a really interesting season where we're kind of focused on one thing at a time for 3 to 4 episode runs. We never get too much of one thing before we're into the next big thing that takes over the storyline, and each and every one of them is interesting and entertaining in their own ways. Let's run through them. We will do so more or less chronologically because it just kind of is the easiest way to break them all down. And again, like we said, these kind of all do come in order, although I'm going to save the draft till the very end because the draft is I got to talk about the draft process and how great that was. But if we move past that into the fact that they're in the house, they're joined in their teams. The first big storyline of the season is Austin versus everybody. That is from moment one that they're in the house through the first 6 episodes or so until they've wiped out basically all of them. It is Austin versus everyone. Real world Austin. It obviously just filmed. They come into the house. There's 4 of them: Wes, Johanna, Danny, Melinda, all from that cast. 2 couples, both dating, which is obvious by the word couples, but I felt like clarifying that they were, in fact, dating as well. And the interesting thing about them is not just that it's 4 people from the same cast. That on its own is going to get you a target. In a group of 24, 4 people, that's a lot of numbers that are going to work together. They're also all rookies, which is the other interesting thing about this group, is that it's 12 alumni versus 12 fresh meat, except 4 of the alumni have never played the challenge before. They're just coming off this incredibly highly rated season of the Real World, and the challenge is like, we got to keep them on television, get them in there, and they're all, for the most part, at least the 2 guys are excited about getting on the show themselves. That makes their team rookie pairs, which, as always, is never going to be a good thing in a challenge house. And so, of course, targeting them was going to happen. It wouldn't have mattered who they actually were, what their personalities were, how they interacted with everyone, who their partners would have been, and how much people liked their new partners. None of it mattered. It was 4 people from the same cast. They were all rookies being called alumni. They were on rookie teams. And this was going to happen. And then you add in the relationship aspect that it's 2 couples. You add in that Danny and Wes kind of have big egos when they come into the house. It rubs some people the wrong way right away. They do, episode 1, they're all fine in the rooms. And they do the whole like, hey, this room has 4 beds. It seems like they're claimed, but can we kick these people out? We would really like to have these 4 beds, for privacy and intimacy. We find out in the reunion that wasn't as big of a deal as maybe they made it look in the episode, but it was indicative of the entire problem that the rest of the cast had with these 4 individuals. So this was a done deal from the moment they walked in. They should have known. I think they did know, and if they didn't, they learned immediately after 1 daily challenge. They were very clearly like, all right, the rest of the group has decided the easiest thing to do, the smartest thing to do is let's just take out these 4 teams at the bottom of everyone else's totem pole. The other 8 teams are above it. No problems here. And so that's the way it goes. And that leads to Wes and Casey having to take everyone else from the Austin world out. Wes having to take out his best friend, his fiance, or soon-to-be fiance, his girlfriend at the time, his best friend's fiance, and he does so in order. He starts, beats Danny and Evelyn, episode 1. Shout out to Evelyn on this one for in their exile. The moment Wes and Casey cross the finish line, Danny's like, fuck this, I don't want to finish, drops all the weight. Evelyn is like, no, we're supposed to finish, and goes so far as to pick all the bags up herself and drag them across the finish line. So just, shows the future champion that she is obvious in that moment as an 18-year-old, being like, hey, like, we finish things like this, and if you don't want to finish, fuck you, I'll carry the 150 pounds of my own and do it. So shout out Evelyn for that. They knock out that, which is after the fact, we can look back on a rewatch and be like, oh, Wes had to go against his real good buddy. There's a history of good friends having to go against each other in eliminations. That's great. But this one, even more in the moment, if you can remember back, their season of the real world, they become very, very close. Danny loses his mother during that season. Wes is there for him. It's very emotional. They're super duper tight. And then obviously the four of them together, the two couples that come out of that season, they're unbelievably tight. So these two going against each other day one in the Challenge House was pretty big deal and pretty crazy and like interesting television to watch in the moment, and still is, after the fact. Then Wes and Casey have to take out Melinda and Ryan, which becomes the first of 2 in a row that I've got to say, Melinda and Ryan forget their flag during their exile, forgetting the flag. Everyone this season forgets their flag in the exile. It is incredible how much it happens. But one of the many times it does is Melinda and Ryan start off behind Wes and Casey. They get the first puzzle done. At this point in time, Wes and Casey are still on the we don't do puzzles, we just get to the finish line kind of strategy. Melinda and Ryan drop their weight. They're catching up, and then they forget their freaking flag. And I think there's a good chance they come back and win if they don't forget that flag. And then the third and final one, Wes has to go against his girlfriend, Johanna, and Johanna and Jesse also forget their flags. They take a big lead on Wes and Casey. They don't even notice Casey have to turn around and run back because Wes and Casey had forgot their flag. They just keep going. They get basically to the end before they realize, shoot, we forgot both of our flags. We got to go back. This is insane. They should have won, which is a huge what if that either one of those, Wes and Casey, could have lost these exiles very, very easily with, the other teams not slipping up or them slipping up more. But it doesn't happen. Wes takes out Danny, Melinda, and Johanna, all 3 other Austin teams. And so the kind of Austin versus everyone becomes, an afterthought at that point. But that's 6 episodes, 6 out of 16 episodes. That's all anything is just let's decimate this real world Austin. Tina and Coral are definitely kind of the pseudo leaders of it, but everyone else is on board. Derrick, Darrell, Theo, all the other, Tanya, all the other true alumni are fully on board with like, yeah, this sounds great. And this is deserved. Like, you don't get to come in here and be alumni without ever actually being rookies. And so that happens. And since we're on the subject, we might as well just talk a little bit about Wes and Danny. Wes and Danny, they both got some things to work on. Let's be honest. At this point in time, both guys, I at this point in time loved them. Real World Austin was the middle of my kind of trio of Philadelphia, Austin, Key West. The Real World seasons I was just all in on, and was the right age for me to just be all in on. So I loved Wes and Danny and Johanna and Melinda and Nehemiah and Rachel and whoever the 7th person is from that cast that I am forgetting, but they definitely had some things to work on in when they came into the house. Danny and Melinda's relationship is very toxic on this season. He goes home first, and then it's shown, she's on the phone with him constantly afterwards. He's asking her, like, why are you wearing this outfit if I'm not there anymore and shit like that. It's not good. And it would last a while longer because they're on a few more seasons together after this, but it's not great while they're there. It's not great while only one of them's there, and we're still seeing some of it. A lot to fix up there from Danny's side of things. And then we got Wes. One of the great the great stories in challenge history. There's been a few characters over the years who we've really seen grown up and mature and change and become these incredible humans, and where we saw, we see the seeds of it early on, but there's a lot of rough edges to wear down here. A CT, maybe a Cara Maria. There's been a handful of them over the years, and Wes is certainly one of them. And it starts here, and it starts with he and Johanna. If you haven't watched the season of The Real World and you just see them if you're just a challenge fan at this point, you watch this, you're like, what? How are these two together exactly? Like, what exactly is she interested in on this side? Because he's kind of being a dick, and it just doesn't seem to make a total ton of sense. He has some bad moments yelling at her from time or two. It should be said in his defense, the little clip that they now show all the time, or they show a bunch at the reunion and things, where he's just kind of yelling at her after one of the daily challenge. It seems really, really bad. The context of it isn't all that bad. Like, you should not yell, and you should not call your girlfriend a bitch. Or it seems like he kind of stops after saying the letter S, where it seems like he might be about to call her a slut or something of that nature, which is a huge no-no, even more so on television, if that should even matter. But should at least be said, in the smallest defense of Wes, of his issues in the times he and Johanna have big arguments on this show, are basically boil down to, hey, why aren't you trying? Why don't you care about this game more? It's not actually anything between them. It's like, hey, this is the coolest thing I've ever done, and why aren't you fighting for yourself more? And obviously it's not handled well at all, but it makes a little bit of a difference to me, the context of what they're arguing about and everything. So it makes sense that, one, she stands up for herself, really, really great. She stands up for Casey, which is really great. We'll talk about Casey and Wes in a moment. And he listens to her every time she says it. And he does seemingly take it to heart. He apologizes. The apologies seem a little half-hearted here and there, but he does at least say sorry a couple different times and acknowledge that she's right, even if that doesn't totally change his actions, which it doesn't. But, thankfully we know, we're watching this, 16 years later, we know where Wes has come from this moment, and it's all wonderful and great. And so we can see the good in him while acknowledging that it's not the best look for him in his relationship this season, and certainly not in his partnership, because he is not so nice to Casey all season. Casey, what a wonderful, just an absolutely treasure of a human being. Couldn't be more nice and innocent in this season, and yet Wes is over here just yelling at her every chance he gets to do better. And again, it does come back to the context of it. Over the course of the season, you realize that, yeah, Wes is being a dick. He's being a little bit of an asshole, and it's not pretty. It's not a good look. But it is all coming from damn, this guy's super fucking competitive. He really, really, really wants to win this stuff. This is what matters to him. Maybe it should matter a little less, or maybe, being, proving himself athletically is something, that young Wes had to learn. There's more to life than just that and whatnot, as plenty of the people on the show, and I shouldn't even say young people, plenty of the people on the show at this day and time, and still today, they used to all be super young. Some of them are still super young today, but all of them have to learn. But I did have interesting rewatching it. There were more moments of him being nice than I kind of remember, more moments of him laying off, or at least saying there was one time he says, I was the weak link today. He kind of laughs the one time near the end of the season where she beats him in one of the daily challenges in one of the rounds and says, I beat you, bitch. And he just kind of laughs, damn it, you did. But there's there's a few more of those than I remembered, which is to say there's a few of them, which I didn't really remember there being any. But they don't make up at all for all of the yelling, the name calling, the degrading. It is bad. It's a real bad look. And it's the first I can really remember of an elongated version of it in the show's history up to this point, where, they're partners. And so this is a reoccurring thing. Every daily challenge, every elimination, which they go into 5 of them. So it's over and over and over and over. We have to see this. And, he gets a little better throughout the season. He definitely, after Johanna kind of gets on him for hey, you can't call her these words. You can't speak this way to her. He continues to yell at her, but he cuts back on pretty much in total on the name calling and using the word bitch and things of that nature. So that there's mild improvement within some really bad stuff and a bad look the whole time. To be absolutely fair from Casey's standpoint, one, she handles it like a goddamn champion. That's the first and foremost thing. Absolutely incredible how she handles it and, stands up for herself multiple times. One of my favorite moments of the season is it's small. I believe it's actually in it's a credit sequence, which, as always, bring back the credit sequence. But after they win the elimination, the third exile versus Johanna and Jesse, the credits show TJ leaning up against a truck with Wes and Casey standing there, I assume, waiting for the van that's going to take them back to the house. And Casey's just laying into Wes, and Wes is, totally taking it. TJ is just laughing about it because he knows she absolutely deserves to say whatever the hell she wants to him. She stands up for herself a few times, but also she does DQ a bunch. So, should Wes be way fucking nicer about all of it? Yes. Is he a horrible teammate? Yes. But does Casey DQ a lot, and does she not do so well at a lot of the daily challenges? Yeah, that's also true as well. But she really does well in the exiles, which is the kind of underrated thing is, just because she can't carry that much weight during it, very few of the people, male or female on the season, can do that part of it, but she absolutely kicks ass in the exiles, not so much the dailies. I do feel like there's a little bit of, she's brand new to reality television as well as this show. And I feel like she kind of bought in a bit to the, I suck. Everyone knows I suck. That's my storyline is I suck. And while there's moments of that where she turns it into really funny quotes, which she's going to be nominated for quote of the year later on. But I wonder if looking back, if she feels like, I kind of let that become the thing I was known for. And I went with it because I didn't really know, I don't know how this works. And, it's partially the edit that it gets and whatnot. But that's Wes and Casey. That's Austin versus everyone. That was definitely storyline number one of the season that dominated the first 6 episodes. And then the Wes and Casey thing was one of the only ones that really lasted throughout the entirety of the season from episode 1 to episode 16, the entire way through. The next storyline that then took over and really ran subsequent to the Austin versus everyone. The reason Austin never had a chance to get themselves out of the predicament is because they could never win a daily challenge because Evan and Coral were too busy winning every goddamn one of them. And so this ends up going about 11 episodes deep before it's eventually over, but it is, the other dominant storyline of the early and middle part of the season. And that is Coral and Evan absolutely kick everyone's ass, and they're absolutely far and away the best team in the house on this season. One of the best, most formidable pairings we've seen in the history of the challenge. They win 5 of the first 6 daily challenges. 5 out of 6 daily challenges, and should be noted, the 6th one, the one they do not win, they purposely don't win. They go into saying, we don't want to win anymore. They've realized the format of it being that, every other daily challenge is the one that really truly matters to get you safety and to get the power of picking someone to go in. The second daily challenge in every rotation is just to win a pardon to get yourself out of elimination, but the team that already won is safe. And so when one of those rolls around, the jailbird one, they act a fool. They just have a bunch of fun with it. It is comical. It is hilarious. It is wonderful. They're still the best part of the daily challenge, but they don't win it. So really, they honestly could have went 6 for 6. They went 5 for 6 and through the one that they didn't win. And at that point, after they are 5 out of 6, that is when Evan reveals to us at home and the camera and the production and no one else that he has a sports hernia, which is a major injury. That is a rupture of a tendon in your stomach, groin region. It is not something you fuck around with. That is a major injury. It is surgery required to repair and remove. It is life-threatening if, there's internal bleeding with this, and if it ruptures to the point of like full-blown explosion, it can kill you. People have died from a sports hernia gone wrong and not tended to in the right amount of time. So this is not just the first major injury in challenge history and eventually the first injury to get someone sent home, but this is one of the most serious injuries everyone's ever had in challenge history, even, a decade and a half later. It is insane. And it's more insane that he keeps competing. That one, they let him keep competing. This the first thing we got to talk about on this is the medical situation on this season. It's this very interesting dichotomy of, and I want to say this as politely as possible. Some of the seasons of the challenge, the medical staffing is a little bit better, or the medical access, I should say, is much better than other ones. Obviously, this season they're near major cities in Australia, a country where they speak English. And so if anyone gets super hurt like they do, and Coral and Evan end up in the hospital, they're at a hospital of a major city that's nearby, quick, easy access, and they speak the same language. There's no language barrier to be able to understand the risks and what's going on with their bodies. That's a lot different than, like when they're in the middle of a desert somewhere and it's like, we've got our medical team here on site, but if you got to go to a hospital, it's going to take a minute to get there. And, it's still a pretty remote hospital, maybe not the best resources involved, and so he's in a great situation that this happens on this season, where he can get quick, easy, top-notch medical service that he can understand without any language barrier or anything like that. But he just blows it off. And the flip side of that is, how does the production clearly doesn't have rules in place quite yet, because they obviously know, they're the ones that, get him to the hospital. They know he now has a hernia and that he's been told by the doctor, hey, you shouldn't be doing anything physical. We should fix this. And he says, nah, I'm good. I would like to keep competing until I die on the field, essentially, he says multiple times over. Wild that they let him continue as long as he did, because after his hernia is revealed, they do 4 more daily challenges, and they don't just do them, they still do really well. They do the cross paths daily challenge, where they have to hang upside down from a rope over water, which thankfully they somehow get across and they don't fall, because falling into water at that height with a hernia, not good. And they get second in that one. They still get second by half a second to Theo and Shonda, so they still almost win one into having the injury. Deflated kayak daily challenge, they get third in. Swimming with sharks is where things start to fall off. They don't finish, but only 3 teams do, so not finishing isn't a huge deal. It's actually Coral that's kind of holding them back there. Evan flies through the water and is again another what are you doing, dude? And then the one where it comes to a screeching halt, and the one that is terrifying to watch over and over, and that is Human Oxbow, where they have to, as 2 teams of however many is left, 6 or 7 at that point, pull 850-pound sled through the mud, and Evan is out there pulling as hard as he possibly can, which is literally the worst possible thing you could do. If the doctor said you're not allowed to do anything physical, and he's like, okay, but I have to do something. What could I do? What's the range of good to bad physical things? If they're all bad, I get it. The end of the range, the extreme of the absolutely don't do this or you're going to probably die, is pulling a weighted sled through mud. Is a horrible idea. He's going as hard as anyone in this thing. I can't believe he doesn't, fall over in, unbelievable pain in the middle of that mud, and everyone doesn't find out then and there what's going on. Somehow during it, even in the pain he's in, Coral ends up popping her knee out of place. So then she has to go to the hospital, which then he can bum the ride and say, I'm just going to support my teammate. He finally kind of comes clean to her after they both come out of the hospital. He finally tells her, he went four challenges, which, is probably in real time, 7 or 8 days minimum, maybe more, without telling his partner or anyone in the cast that he has a sports hernia and that he's still trying to compete. Insanity. And Coral, her knee gets popped back in. She is okay to go for the most part, but then they're finally told that they have to go home, which is a big deal. It's the first time it's ever happened. TJ literally doesn't know how to tell them. He feels horrible about telling them. They kind of refuse. Justin Booth has to come in as the executive producer, comes into the field and tells them you are not allowed to continue. I am sorry, but we are not going to let you, Evan. This is insane. You cannot do this. You're going to go get surgery. And thank God they did, because it feels like he was just going to keep trying. And, the next couple times they have to jump down into water. God forbid they make it to the final challenge or go into an exile where he's trying to run with hundreds of pounds on his back. Just really, really wild, really, really fortunate that it never got worse than it did, which is saying something because it got to a life-threatening, horrifically, blown sports hernia, which it's just wild. And the craziest thing about all of it is that not just that it happens, but that it happens to these two, and that it happens to these two who are dominating the season, not just dominating. They were going to win this season. Make no bones about it. Yet, if them in a final versus Darrell and Aviv, it totally would just come down to the puzzle and who had to carry how much weight. But the idea of Evan not being able to carry their weight pretty much all by himself, and Coral's run that distance in the final before, they would have been the favorites to win for sure. Darrell and Aviv definitely still could have pulled that out. Because if Coral maybe could have nailed those puzzles, maybe her and Evan could have won. Either way, they're undeniably were the best team this season up until the point that they got hurt by a wide margin. They were also the stars of the show. They were, non-Austin division. The entire story was about them, and they were a perfect match for each other. They were both so good in the confessionals. They were having a great time with the winning. They were having fun with their power. And they were the stars of the show for sure. We'll talk later. They were the gone too soon MVP candidates that if they made it to the end of the season, they were early front runners for MVP candidacy. And they work so well together. We see on the reunion, maybe they started hooking up a little too. They're very coy about it on the reunion, but they're shown in bed moving around a little bit together. So seems like at least a little bit of something happened. And all in all, it goes down as one of the greatest seasons ever by a pair, maybe the greatest ever, non-winner, non-finalist division of people that didn't make a final. Probably the greatest season of all time. It just really is insane to think they won 5 out of 6 of the dailies with a very good competitive cast pre-injury. Still got second and third post-injury. And, had to physically be told you were not allowed, we are not going to let you, no matter how much you fight us, not going to let you. They end up going home. And that opens a big old power vacuum in the middle of the season, and someone's got to fill it. And that leads us to our next storyline. Diem and Derrick. The angel that is Diem Brown, may she rest in peace. She enters our lives in this season. And as she does, we come to learn of her cancer diagnosis and a little bit of her background and what an absolute just champion and wonderful person she is. And it really, this season, her and Derrick take over that power vacuum left by Coral and Evan in a big way. And as they do, their connection, their romance, as it would tend to be, and their friendship comes center stage, and her, backstory and her cancer diagnosis and the fight she's going through off of the screen comes center stage for sure. We find out about this in, I believe, the second episode. The two of them go for a walk. She, Derrick asks her, what are you most scared of? And in his mind, he's thinking, I'm trying to slowly, we did a super heights challenge for the first one. I've been on a few of these. I'm probably poking around trying to find out, hey, what freaks you out? What should we get ready for to be able to be good partners and support each other? Do you not want to eat gross stuff? Do you not want to, if we have to wrestle each other, you not like that, or you don't like being in the water, or what are you scared of? And she drops on him, well, the thing that kind of frightens me is this battle, this real life battle I'm going through, and that just started right before the show, that she said she literally, was in treatment up until the day before she came on the show. And it's this very emotional, interaction between them and conversation. We learn about it as, the viewers of the show. And we find out throughout the season, and after the season, in the reunion especially, that Derrick was the first person on the show to know of anyone, not just the cast, producers, anyone, which is wild. Aviv became the second one to know. Diem and Aviv became very good friends on the season with Lynette too, but then Diem, kind of fucked over Lynette that one time in the middle, and so broke up their little trio. But Diem and Aviv, we find out on the reunion, Derrick and Aviv were the only two that knew for most of the season, and then everyone slowly started finding out in the middle of the season, up to when Tina and Diem have a huge blow up, when Tina, near the end of the season, Tina and Kenny win the one of the last daily challenges. They choose to send in Derrick and Diem. Diem flips out about it, is real upset about it. Tina says some really not great things. You get in a war of the words with Tina. She's gonna bite back and she's gonna throw some shit out there, and she does in this instance. And it's not a great look. Nothing cancer related, but just some stuff probably shouldn't have said that she then feels bad about, because we find out on the reunion they ask her point blank, like, did you know what DM was going through off of the show and why decisions in the game maybe affected her, or she was a little more on edge than others. And Wes, among others, comes to Tina's defense of like, Tina had no idea. The moment after that, they get in the van, separate from Derrick and Diem and Darrell and Aviv, who are, going to, or no, they were just in a different car than them, I believe. But they tell Tina, like, hey, just so you know, like, this Diem has this going on. And Tina says, I felt horrible about it in the moment. So the rest of the cast doesn't know. And the crazy thing is, how do the producers not know in advance? Like, I know we're still in the early-ish days of this show, but not really. We're on season number 12. And the fact that someone could be doing chemotherapy treatments up until the day before they come to the show, and you have no idea, you're not, maybe, I'm sure there had to be some sort of like medical questionnaire or something. And maybe DM was just like, I'm not telling them. I'm just not putting anything on there. And it's, it's all what I say. It's not them actually pulling any sort of real records or anything like that. Maybe that's the case, but it's pretty insane that they don't know, and that it took until, obviously when she starts talking about it and they're actively filming her talking about it, they then know at that point. But it's really scary to think that, as Aviv says in the reunion, it's really brave and bold of DM to have been like, no one needs to know. If something bad happens, we'll figure it out when it happens. But otherwise, I don't want anyone to know. I don't want it to be a story. I don't want people to think of me differently because of it. I just want to go forget about it and challenge myself in this other way. It's inspiring. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. It's also really, really scary. So the rest of the cast eventually learns. And Derrick and Diem, they really fill that power vacuum when Evan and Coral end up getting sent home. Derrick and Diem go on to win 3 straight daily challenges, fully seize power of the game. And along the way of winning those 3 daily challenges, they find a way to kind of screw over both of their trios of friends. They each convince the other person to do it to the other person's friends. First, Diem, against Derrick's best wishes, is like, we got to throw in Theo and Shonda. They're, really, really good, and we got to get them out of here. And Derrick's like, Theo, me, and Darrell kind of have a little pact going, but I hear you. You're making sense. And also, I'm kind of digging you. And so I'm not going to, push back. But he allows that to happen. The very next time, then, Derrick's like, we got to get Shane and Lynette. Reversal of roles. Diem is like, Lynette and Aviv are my girls, but I guess we'll just do it. Then she feels horrible. So they become center of all the attention of the whole season of like, they're in power, they're winning stuff. Her story is the heartbeat, the story of the season at this point in time for kind of the third quarter of the season, if you will. And they're also kind of betraying their friends a little bit. They're taking the game real serious. They're playing strategy, and they set themselves up as the team to beat. And as all that is happening, romance ensues, which makes total sense. How could these two not fall for each other in the situation that they're in? It is just absolutely tailor-made for this to have happened. Obviously, Diem is a truly, truly special, wonderful human being. She's beautiful inside and out. She's going through this horrible situation and taking it on with this brave face and this incredible attitude about it. And if you're her partner and you're someone who is attracted to women in the first place, how would you not do the same thing that exactly what happens to Derrick here, being like, oh my God, like I can't believe this person's my partner, how incredible of a human she is. And now, like, I don't care about winning this money for me. I want to win. This is such a life-changing, life-saving possibly thing for her. How do you not get wrapped up and invested in that? Ended up falling for this girl. Makes total sense. And on the flip side, Diem being like, this guy's fighting for me with everything he's got. He has such a good heart. He's such a tough, like, never give up attitude. He is completely, giving me everything I need in this moment as support and as, fighting alongside me as a teammate. Makes total sense that these two end up, getting romantic. You throw in that they continually go to, I forget the name of, they go to the same kind of bar restaurant every single couple days, it seems like, on this season. And, definitely a couple of those moments that there's some drinks had, at least on Derrick's side. He still loves the party atmosphere in the Challenge House at this point, but romance ensues. They're both sweet, lovable. It's really nice to watch. It's really, really great stuff. It's one of the many challenge relationships that happen over the years. This one is, it's forgotten a little bit because we're one season away from, Diem and CT's love story unfolding, but Diem and Derrick is one of the just most sweet and like enjoyable and high that I couldn't approve of more of just like, this is really wonderful. This is like really feels good to watch. After the season, we find out via the reunion, they're both on the reunion. Diem, they're asked, of course, what's going on. Diem says, they're great friends. They will always be great friends. They're always going to mean a lot to each other for what they meant to each other during the season. Derrick basically doesn't speak. He's asked direct questions multiple times in the reunion. He kind of never responds to any of them. He, along with potentially a lot of the guys on the reunion, I'm looking at you, Theo, and Evan especially, and Kenny a little bit, but mostly Evan and Derrick, maybe had some drinks before the reunion. At least it comes off that way. But it also, in this moment, Derrick doesn't really respond to like, what's up with you and Diem anymore. He lets her do all the talking, and he does seem a little sad about it. It seems like maybe, if you're reading between the lines off this, totally unfairly reading between these short interactions of edited reunion television we're watching, it seems like maybe Diem after the fact was like, I love you as a friend, and it's not going to be more than that. And Derrick was maybe a little more heartbroken or sad about that, but that's just me speculating. Either way, they did not make it, but they, remained close, good friends. There was no ill will there at any point. Final thing with them is they eventually do lose, but they have maybe the most bold exile strategy of anyone. By the time they end up in exile, the last of the season, the dreaded last team eliminated, which should be said, it kind of comes, while it helps them initially that Evan and Coral get sent home and opens that power vacuum for them to fill, it does eventually kind of hurt them because they don't change the format during it. TJ announces when they go home, hey, we're still doing the same amount of dailies in exile. So instead of 4 teams in the final challenge, only 3 are going to make it. If there's 4, Derrick and Diem maybe make it. Maybe not, because, obviously Coral and Evan would have still been there. Who knows? But they get in the last exile, and they decide they have more weight than maybe anyone's had, except for Tanya, in the exile to carry. They decide right from moment one, hey, we've heard from other people that the puzzles, more often than not, if you do them, the advantage is you get to drop your bags. So screw it. Drop the bags from moment one. Let's just run without them. And if we don't get one of those, you can drop your bags, then we lose. And bold strategy. I actually really, really like it, both because I think they knew they were a little bit of underdogs versus Darrell and Aviv, and they knew they had heard from everyone else who had been pretty open by that point. I think there was 3 of the 6 exiles, so 3 of the 5 at that point had featured a clue that said you can drop all of your weight. They get to the first puzzle, they get the puzzle right, and it says you can drop 1 of your 2 bags, which, what a heartbreaking moment. They probably lose anyways because Darrell and Aviv absolutely smoke this elimination, which just is more to come in the final challenge itself. But maybe not, because if they could have, that second puzzle tripped them up in a big way. But if that first puzzle would have been you get to drop all your bags, the same as it had been 3 times prior, there's a world where they win it. So I respect the strategy, but they bow out, the last team to go before the final. But Derrick and Diem, and really Diem's battle with cancer coming to the forefront would become, one of the biggest storylines in the history of the challenge over multiple seasons. And again, may she rest in peace. An absolute angel looking over all of us in the challenge world. And hats off to her at how quickly she turned this into such a positive thing for so many other people on the reunion. She debuts her website, which was an incredible idea. I don't know if it's still running or not, or I know there's different foundations with her name attached to it at this point, but the original one that she rolls out immediately after this season, I forget the exact name of it, but it was a registry of sorts where you could go on and you could find Diem is going through chemo and needs this, and this, from things as small as needs wigs purchased to needs treatments paid for to needs this medication, whatever. It was she said it was, a wedding registry for cancer patients of things that they needed help with financially covering from big to small. Incredible idea, helped out a ton of people, and her memory and her story still inspires a lot of people today. And it all starts with this season. Final storyline then to talk about is the draft. Just the draft concept and the idea of holding a combine for the fresh meat and then getting to draft the teams. I love it so much. I want them to do something like this again. It doesn't have to be with fresh meat. I'd love to see a draft when everyone knows everyone has done seasons together. And it works out so well because it somehow does make for some really fair teams, although at the very end, it doesn't feel like it throughout the time, but by the end it does. You could realize Darrell and Aviv maybe was a little bit of an unfair team. There was only 2, but looking at the draft order, first off, the combine that they have to do is hilarious. We only get the short montage of it, but is incredible that they make these people do a combine, but also what else, they have to give them something other than just here's some people on a stage. Go ahead and pick, so makes total sense. But in retrospect, the draft process, all of the picks make perfect sense except for 2. And there's only 2 that don't, and they could have really, really possibly changed the game and the outcome of the game, but as well as, careers of different challenge folks. The big one being Evelyn as the very first pick. So Danny gets the first pick. He's obviously picking a female. He picks Evelyn, number 1 off the board. Now, in retrospect, that makes total sense because we're like, yeah, it's Evelyn. Are you kidding me? But in the moment, these are all 12 brand new people sitting in front of them, and all they know is they know their age, they know how fast they ran a 40-yard dash, how fast they climbed over a couple walls, how fast they solved a logic puzzle, and how many out of 5 attempts they did some hand-eye coordination that I'm not sure what actually was, when almost none of them could do any of. So they don't know a whole lot, but they know a little. And if you're just going off that, Aviv should have been the first pick. If Danny was real smart about it and actually really weighed stuff. We learned from Darrell in the reunion when he's asked, why did you pick Aviv? He says, when I walked in that room, Aviv and Evelyn were the only 2. They were kind of leaning forward. They were geared up. You could tell they were ready. They weren't scared. They were there. They wanted to compete. And those 2 stood out to him from the moment they walked in the room before they even saw any stats or anything like that. So that part makes some sense. But Aviv had, in the logic puzzle that they had to do, got it in 3 seconds, which is insane. I don't know what it was, but figuring whatever it was out in 3 seconds is crazy. Evelyn, 1 minute, 41 seconds, which wasn't bad. There's only a few people who did it under a minute. There's a bunch of people in the 1, 2, and 3 minute range. And then the couple people, Big Easy at 11 minutes, Shonda at 12 minutes, Ryan, 22 minutes. Not sure what happened to Ryan on that puzzle. But basically the hand-eye, the up and over, the 40-yard dash, all the same. Aviv having the logic thing, being far and away the best one at it. Feels like she should have maybe been the first pick. And for the other fact that the age would have mattered. She's 21, Evelyn's 18. I would have went with that slightly older, maybe, a little bit more prepared to handle what a challenge house had in store. But Danny goes the other way, and that ends up leading, Darrell and Aviv. Darrell gets the 3rd overall pick, but the 2nd female pick takes Aviv. They obviously go on to win. Who knows if that's Darrell and Evelyn instead? Do they still win? Does that mean Evelyn becomes an immediate challenge champion, even boosting her great resume even more? Who knows? Just is a very interesting thing. And then the second one that doesn't make sense, and the one that really could have affected the game, and that is Wes. Wes chooses Casey. And Wes chooses Casey when there is still two more men to make choices. So when he's up, he is picking between Casey, Diem, and Lynette. And I don't know why he doesn't take Lynette. And I feel like if he takes Lynette, respect to Casey, but I think Wes and Lynette win because Lynette proves herself to be quite good throughout this. She is, she's a very petite woman, as many of them are on this season, but it doesn't end up mattering. That's an advantage, if anything, throughout this course of this season, and certainly in the Exiles and the final. I wonder for a little bit, because Wes immediately goes to, he asks Casey, there's kind of the joke of like, Casey, what happened with those walls? Because everyone got over the walls in under a minute, except for Casey, who took 9 minutes, and we maybe didn't actually even finish. They showed the video of her multiple times just running into the wall, running into the wall, running into the wall. But then Wes is like, what happened there? Yeah, I'll take you anyways. But Lynette on the one got over the walls. They ran basically the same time and had the same hand-eye coordination. And in the logic side of things, Casey took 9 minutes to Lynette's 15 seconds. Lynette was the second best of basically anyone on the logic puzzle. And how Wes looked at that and decided Casey over her, I'm not exactly sure. Part of me thinks it's because she looks a little bit like Johanna, and maybe he's like, I don't want my girlfriend to think like I have a partner now who is very pretty and kind of looks like her. Maybe that plays a part in it. I don't know. But if he picks Lynette, I feel like they might win. They're still going to get targeted. They're still going to win those first three. They're going to perform the same or even a touch better than they do, than he and Casey do. They're going to still win those. I think they still win all five, even if they end up in all five of the exiles, excuse me. And I think they maybe they have a better shot of winning some dailies, because Lynette does win a couple dailies with Shane and does really, really well. And I think it could have changed the season completely. Everything else, though, the draft order in the moment made sense. Retroactively makes sense. Coral is second. She takes Evan. Definitely the best choice on the guy's side. Darrell takes Aviv. Tanya takes Johnny. Shout out Johnny. Why they never brought Johnny back. Absolute stud. Crushed it. Theo takes Shonda. Another absolute stud. Why she never came back, don't know. Tina takes Kenny. Then the Wes Casey one, as we said, the only one that's kind of a little odd. And then Johanna takes Jesse over Big Easy or Ryan. Total toss-up. Retroactively, maybe those go in a different order, but totally fine in the moment. Derrick takes DM. Katie takes Easy. Melinda takes Big Easy. Shane takes Lynette. Gets the steal of the draft with the last pick. But for the most part, it makes sense. Again, I will say, do the draft again. It's so great. And I know it's great because it works out in this one. It leads to these amazing pairings. As ugly at times as it was to watch Wes and Casey, they were an unbelievable pairing for television purposes. Tina and Kenny couldn't have been a more perfect pairing. They're going to be talked about a lot during the awards segment coming up. They're just so great this whole season together. Evan and Coral, what a great team. They make perfect sense together. Big Easy and Katie is just great television together. Theo and Shonda. Downline, Darrell and Aviv. Aviv is like the perfect partner for Darrell to have. It worked out really, really well. Who knows if it would work out again in the future, but I like the idea of having to do the draft and not just, we've seen a couple times, the one challenge where here's the two captains and pick, we're going to split up into two teams. You pick your team. I want to see drafting for partners again sometime in the future. But with that, that's our biggest storylines of the season. Dominated by Austin versus everyone into Coral and Evan, into Derrick and Diem, and Diem's cancer revelation, and Wes and Casey through the whole season. That was really everything. But in the background, there was a couple other people making a lot of noise and making a lot of impact and a lot of value. And we're going to finally get to talking about some of them via our awards. So let's get the statues out. Let's get them cleaned up, looking nice, and let's hand out some hardware. First award up is the best daily challenge of the season, and some quick commentary on the daily challenges as a whole, since we haven't touched on them during any of the storylines there. Some of the best we've ever seen. Absolutely great slate. I would argue one of the very few things I don't rank as I'm rewatching all these seasons is, I rate every single daily challenge. I don't do an average or a season long rating for them or anything like that. But as far as just looking at the letter grades for this set of daily challenges, it's about as good or better than any season that has come before it. It does suffer slightly from the fact that they have the exile immediately after the daily challenge for half of them, which turns it into, that you could tell they don't want to make every other one very taxing. And that's fair because it obviously is the only way to then, make the exiles kind of a fair fight and people be able to do them super well. But it does hurt the quality of some of the dailies or what they're willing to do. And the ones that are on the non-exile days are certainly like bigger and better and more interesting for the most part. But some of the ones that aren't that taxing do work out really, really well. And overall, again, they're some of the best daily challenges we've ever seen. Let's talk about the 4 that get nominated for the best of the season in chronological order. Episode 4's Jailbreak, which is where they start with their feet shackled, their hands tied behind their back in a little jail cell in the middle of the field. And they have 6 bowls of jail slop in front of them that they have to dig through with their mouths only and find 3 keys and spit those keys out on the ground and then use them to unhook their hands and the door of the jail before running the 50 yards across the field to end their time. It is hilarious. It has the eating element, but they don't actually have to eat. They just have to dig around in this gross slop stuff. Surprisingly, no one like trips and falls during the running with their feet shackled, which thank goodness for them. This is the one that Coral and Evan purposely throw because it doesn't matter and they don't want to win every single one, but they do some funny stuff while throwing it. There's just a lot of comedy ensues. The commentary during it is great. It's a very close race in the end, and it's the first one that someone not named Coral and Evan win. So it's very good. Then there's episode 9. Probably the one I remember the most or remembered the most top of mind coming in. I was like, oh yeah, this season has that one. I can't wait to watch it. That would be Swimming with Sharks, where they go to the Australia's SeaWorld, and there is a shark lagoon that they have gotten access to be able to swim inside of a lagoon full of sharks. Clearly this was passed as totally safe. The sharks were going to totally leave them alone, but there is a lot of small-ish, but is any shark small? It's still a shark. A bunch of sharks in a big old lagoon, and they have to swim out in it, one team at a time, swim out, dive down to the bottom of the lagoon and get, I think there's about 8 puzzle pieces strewn throughout the bottom of the lagoon, bring them back one at a time. They take turns swimming out, get a piece, bring it back. When they're done, they put together the puzzle. Only about half the teams actually get it done in time. There's a 10-minute time limit. And one of the coolest parts about it is, one, they're just swimming with sharks. It's absolutely insane, and it's fun and cool. It's a very close race in the end. It's competitive. That always helps. But then the coolest part is the first team that goes, Wes and Casey, no one gets to watch because it would be unfair to kind of know where the puzzle pieces are at the bottom of the lagoon. But as teams finish, they get to go down to where regularly people, guests of the park, would be viewing from underneath, where you got the big wall where you can see into the tank in front of you and see the bottom of it and see the sharks and everything swim by. They get to all watch the other teams go from in there, which is the coolest setting for anyone ever getting to watch the other competitors go in a daily challenge that I can ever remember seeing. So Swimming with Sharks, pretty wild, pretty crazy, pretty amazing daily challenge. Third nominee then, episode 10, Human Oxpole. We talked briefly about this before, where they split into 2 teams. They have to pull 850-pound sled through the mud. The winning team of that then splits into their actual pairs and does a 350-pound pull as pairs to decide the actual winner. It is the first and kind of only one where brute strength is what wins the day. That would become a little bit more of a common theme in Challenge in years to come. It is super duper close. It's obviously fascinating and interesting and horrifying because this is the one where Evan and Coral finally bow out and end up in the hospital and get their shit started to take care of. But all in all, it's a very interesting, entertaining, close race. Darrell and Aviv, it's the first time they win anything of any sort and kind of put their stamp as like, no one's really been paying attention to us, but we might be one of, if not the best team here. fourth and final nominee, which is also the winner of the best daily challenge of the season, that would be episode 13's Deep Dive. Holy shit, this one is insane. This one is where TJ has a boat. TJ likes his boats. This is, I think, the first time he gets a boat in his challenge career. They go out 4 miles out to sea. 4 miles out. They go way out into the middle of the freaking ocean. And they have a rig set up that is going to take each team one at a time, that is going to pull them 30 feet under the water, all straight down to where a flag is at. They then have to hold on till they get to the bottom of this 30 feet, which is really far underwater in the ocean, both just kind of scary, but also the pressure of your head and on your body going that deep it's a lot. 30 feet's a pretty big, good distance. And then when they get the flag, it is a holding your breath contest. You can swim up to the top, but you can't surface. Once you surface, your time stops. Of the 5 teams left at this point, only one DQs. Tina and Kenny are the only one. They have to go first, and they're the only ones that, like, halfway down, they're like, this pressure is insane. Tina going into it is a little sick, and so I think the pressure is even worse, and they're like, fuck this, we're not doing it. They bow out. The other 4 teams all do it. It comes down to a half-second victory for Derrick and Diem over Theo and Shonda, which ends up leading to Theo and Shonda going home after that one, and they, at the time, maybe post Coral and Evan, Theo and Shonda were kind of looking like the best team, although we then found out neither of them can solve a puzzle to save their lives, which was their detriment in the end. But athletically, they were the superior team for sure. But it's wild. They go 4 miles out to sea, 30 feet down. Pretty crazy stuff. I don't know if this would be happening again on the challenge now. And if it did, I think there'd be a lot more safety concerns going on. And there's a moment, the credits scene of this episode that this takes place in shows them all hanging out on the boat, and the production crew is, either getting the cameras ready or testing the equipment or doing something. They're all sitting there, and then out of nowhere, they're like, did someone just throw up? And they like go over, and Wes knows whatever the producer's name is or whatever, is like, tell me it was so-and-so. Tell me it was so-and-so. I bet it was. And then they're all like laughing and like, dude, the production team's out here coming up, gasping for air, throwing up. Like, I wouldn't be very excited about what you're about to be told to have to do. But either way, Deep Dive episode 13 is the best daily challenge of the season. To the other sporting event then, the elimination and the best of this season. Now, quick commentary on the eliminations, aka the exiles. Obviously, all the exiles are basically the same. They have 3 courses: the beach, the forest, the cliffside course. The only single thing that changes is the puzzles are slightly different every single time, so that if the same people are doing them, it's a little bit different puzzle combinations, but some of those are kept. If it's not the same people doing it, then they, reuse puzzles. The only thing I really noticed different is the very first exile, it doesn't seem like they have the flags, or maybe we just don't hear about having to take the flags with them, but everyone after that does, and the flags become the crucial part of every exile. Are they going to remember the flags? TJ says over and over, every single time, at least twice, says you have to bring your flags with you, and then every single time, at least one, if not both teams, forget. I like the exile concept. I like making it the same thing. And independently in a vacuum, I really, really enjoy the exiles. I think they're fun, interesting, a good kind of barometer of how are these teams then going to be able to do in the final. It's very fun, when Wes and Casey win the first 3 and they're like, we're not going to tell you anything about these. We have this advantage now. It's all very interesting. It does, though, at the same exact time, I miss regular eliminations. And so I don't know that I would, want them to have exiles all the time. I don't know if there's some mix of like, could you do exiles or an elimination in the same season? I don't really know, but I do like that they did the exiles here and that they do it again in Fresh Meat 2. The biggest thing about the exiles, though, before we get into the 4 best of the season, it really, in a lot of ways, comes down to the weight, because the interesting little, twist that they add on it is for the duration of every exile, you have to carry the same amount of weight as you brought with you into Australia. And let me quickly just run through how much weight that was per team, because this is the hidden secret to Wes and Casey's success, is that they're just the lightest packers of anyone, because they have a total of 113 pounds. that they have to carry in their 5 different exiles. The next lowest team was Johanna and Jesse at 133. Then we got Darrell and Aviv at 140 pounds, Danny and Evelyn at 150 pounds. And it should be noted, exile number 1, Danny and Evelyn versus Wes and Casey. There's a bunch of complaining. Evelyn's like, man, Danny packed half of Melinda's stuff. I can't believe we have so much more weight. When it turns out after that, 150 pounds wasn't bad, because then there was Melinda and Ryan with 156, Tina and Kenny with 164, Shane and Lynette 171, Theo and Shonda 186, Derrick and Diem 215, Katie and Eric 216, and then the all-timer, poor Johnny McBride. Tanya and Johnny had 253 pounds between them. And yeah, I don't have the exact number in front of me here, but that was that breakdown was pretty heavily skewed one side versus the other. It was crazy, but Tanya, 153 pounds of that were hers, and then 100 pounds for Johnny. So they both were the 2 biggest packers on either the male or the female side by a wide margin. They end up as partners. That was really what brought them down. But Wes and Casey having only the 113 really was the kind of the big difference ultimately in being able to have that massive advantage every time they went in there, whether they realized that in the moment or how long it took them to realize that or not. That was the case. But while they're all the same, there's still some that were better than others. So 4 nominees for the best of the season. Episode 6, Wes and Casey beating Johanna and Jesse. We said before, Johanna and Jesse should have won that elimination. That is why that one was a little bit more interesting. Episode 10, Tina and Kenny, my favorite team this season for all the comedy they brought, beat Katie and Eric. It is a real race the whole time. There is screw-ups and hijinks on both sides of these 2 teams. And it's very close right down to the end. Tina and Kenny get the win. Episode 14, Tina and Kenny again when they beat Theo and Shonda. That is the best physical team. They knock them out. Theo and Shonda can't do the puzzles. It completely betrays them, Tina and Kenny. It's a wild back and forth because Tina and Kenny keep messing up and having to go back. But they still somehow pull out the win. That one's great. Episode 15, Darrell and Aviv beat Derrick and Diem. The bold strategy we talked about before from Derrick and Diem, it's super duper sad when they lose given her entire story arc. And at that point, no matter who they're going against, you're rooting for them in a big way of like, I really want this girl to win. Doesn't happen. Of those 4 though, Tina and Kenny beating Theo and Shonda was definitely the most memorable of the 4, the highest rated for me of the 4 or of any of them that season. It takes home the award for the best elimination of the season. Our final athletic-based award, then the best athletic performance of the season, and there's some obvious nominees for this. 4 total. Let's talk about the 2 that aren't going to be anywhere near the win, but deserve to be nominated in our actual individual one-time performances. That would be Theo and Shonda in cross paths where they had to stand on opposite platforms about 20, 30 feet apart with a rope between them. They had to each, shimmy across the same rope, crossing each other in the middle, get to the other side as quick as possible. Theo and Shonda do it in 52 seconds. Second place team is 1:26. Third place team is 2:10. Every other team is 3 minutes plus. So they do it way faster than everyone else. They make it look easy, and it is incredibly, incredibly hard. Shout out to them for that. Derrick and Diem then in Deep Blue. They win that one, the one we just talked about, the best daily of the season. They win by 1 second, not even a full second, like a half a second over Theo and Shonda. And that is a really, really intense moment of the season. That was basically one of those 2 teams was going in to the elimination. It ends up being Theo and Shonda because of Derrick and Diem's win and because that one was so scary and hard of a daily challenge. It's got to be nominated here. But the 2 candidates that really take it home. First, there's Wes and Casey. Not a single one, but just 5 exile wins, regardless of the competition they were going against, the mistakes that they made or others made. 5 for 5 in the exiles. Incredibly impressive. They have to be nominated for the best athletic performance, but they do not win because this has to go to Evan and Coral. It just has to go to Coral and Evan, no matter what, any way you slice it. They won 5 out of 6 dailies prior to being injured. There are all kinds of different daily challenges. And again, the one they didn't win, they purposely didn't win. They probably could have. They probably would have if they would have really tried. So that's just incredible. And if we have to give it to one specific of those 5 daily wins, probably rolling in the oats where they had I believe it was 10 minutes total to run back and forth across the field, dive in a vat of oats, put it anywhere they could on their body, hold as much of it as they could, run it back and deposit it in their bin. Most weight wins. They ended that challenge with 23.6 pounds. Second place was 19.8. Third was 14. Fourth was 8. So another one where it's just they won far and away. It wasn't just they won, but just smoked everyone. So that one, if we have to pick an individual, but in general, just Coral and Evan, 5 out of 6 dailies. That is the best athletic performance of the season, bar none. Then we move into the show side of things. We covered our 3 awards in the sports side. Let's move to the show side of our 2 pillars. And we've got best quote. And my goodness, we've got a lot of nominees. I was not willing to, dwindle this down. Maybe I should take the path that, an Oscars or a Grammys does and say maximum number of nominees is this. But I wanted to celebrate the fact that we could have put in the evolutions segment that this is the season where things really ramp up in the confessionals and we start to get a lot of people who know what they're doing, how to be entertaining in those, talking shit, making jokes, being witty, all the good things, all the great confessional stuff. So I'm going to run through these as quickly as we can. We're just going to kind of play them one after the other with very little introduction because there is 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 nominees, if you can believe it. So let's just run through them chronological as quickly as we can here because they all deserve some mention. We got Theo in episode 1 discussing the idea of these fresh meat people coming into this game not having any prerequisites, that he doesn't do that to other types of people and other types of jobs. Take it away, Theo.
Who are these kids? It's not like I come to their job and try to outdo them. You don't see me showing up at Starbucks trying to out latte one of these kids.
If it wasn't obvious in Theo's first 3 seasons on the show why he would eventually become a stand-up comedian, this season cemented that. He's always got the jokes. Second nominee, Tina, episode 2. Another one of Tina. She's just the best. You could put an entire reel of all the time. She just lays out very declarative statements about this game so perfectly. This one, another example of that. Take it away, Tina.
You do not belong here. This is our turf, and we're going to kick the ones we don't like off real quick. This isn't a game. This is politics.
Then we got Theo again in episode 5. Wes goes nuts on everyone when he and Johanna get in their little fight because Johanna doesn't want to necessarily try to argue her way out of going into elimination. She feels like it's inevitable, which it is. Wes decides I'll go ballistic on everyone. Theo thinks that's funny, and he doesn't speak the language that Wes is yelling.
Because I'm coming back, and I'll just keep beating all you guys no matter what the happens. Put in what's fair, or else I'm going to send all you guys home next.
Really, I understand you're livid, dude.
I'm extremely livid right now.
I understand that, but at the same time, you're also semi-delusional, Unfortunately, I can't really figure out exactly what Wes is saying because I don't speak idiot. But what I do derive is that he doesn't want Johanna to go in against him. Well, you shouldn't have put the idea in our heads then.
Fourth nominee then, next episode 6, Casey. She starts standing up for herself a little bit towards Wes, at least in confessional. And in this moment, she and Wes are going against Johanna in the elimination. And Casey doesn't give a shit that it's Wes's girlfriend. He doesn't care if anyone related to Wes shows up. He better be giving it his all.
I expect Wes to do a really good job in the exile. I don't care if his girlfriend is in the exile. I don't care if his mom is in the exile. Wes isn't just doing this for him. He has another teammate.
Goodbye, honey.
Then, third time, not his last time, Theo, another nominee. Episode 7, another one related to Wes. He has a hand in throwing Wes in yet again into elimination, and yet again, he doesn't care what Yes is yelling and ranting about.
We vote Wes and Casey in because Wes mentioned the other day when he was ranting that he will go in every time and blah, 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 got a mohawk. So here you go, bro. You can go back in.
Wes and
He follows that up then in episode 8 with his 4th nominee for the quote of the year. And this one, well, for those just listening on audio, it'll be fine. It doesn't get the whole thing wrong because part of this quote is that he's also wearing the head of the rabbit costume that he seemingly brought with him to Australia. That makes a couple appearances, most notably when he and Big Easy are taking turns wearing it and have a very funny memorable exchange. But he talks about his relationship with Lynette. Theo and Lynette have been getting a little close, and Theo discusses that.
Just sort of like a little bilingual love, I guess you would call it. I don't know what's going on there. You know, we're just a couple of crazy little rabbits, just having a good little time in Mr. McGregor's garden.
Then there's Kenny in episode 9 talking about, this is right after a moment we're going to discuss where he votes for himself. And Tina's wanting to politic. Kenny's not having any of it.
We're an easier team to pick on. You want to put us first in a challenge? Put us first in a challenge. You want to put us last? Put us last. You want to throw us in the exile? You're going to do it anyway, so I'm not going to kiss your ass while you're kicking me in mine.
Then Darrell starts to make his presence known via confessional in the latter half of the season. It starts with letting people know where he's from and how he's going to take it when he is thrown into an elimination, especially by someone he considered a friend.
Wes is trying to hustle. You got to do what you got to do to survive. But be smart about it, bro. You think I'm stupid like I was born yesterday? I ain't from Kansas. I'm from the town, baby. I recognize you just hung yourself. Your ass, I'll see you in exile, bro. You're definitely going in.
Casey gets back in the mix in episode 12. She quits during one of the daily challenges. She refuses to jump off of the high jump, 12 meters, 40 feet, whatever it is, down into the lagoon. And she thinks she has a very good reason for not wanting to do so. Take it away, Casey.
3 seconds. Just step off.
Jumping 4 stories.
It's 4 stories in the water.
I'm not doing it. Call me scaredy cat. That.
All right. Yeah, you guys are disqualified for that.
No person in their right mind decides one day, maybe I'll just jump 4 stories. Maybe that's a good idea. No one does that.
That very same episode, that very same mission, Darrell gets another nominee for the quote of the year. After they jump down into the water, their next task is to climb up on what I can only refer to as a bladder. If you've ever been to a summer camp or one of the lakes where they've got all the inflatable games and, the bladder thing where one person sits on the end, the other jumps on one and it flings them up in the air. They have to climb atop one of those. It's very slippery and it's very topsy-turvy. It's very hard to stay balanced on top. They have to move very carefully while on top of this. And that reminds Darrell of something from his past.
Crawling on the super wave reminds me when I used to sneak girls in the house and you had to tiptoe and you didn't want to get caught. Trying to be sneaky and trying to be smooth without falling, without making the wrong move.
Wes gets in on it in episode 14 with a nominee, and it is in relation to good old Kenny. Wes and Kenny's, they're pretty friendly. They're actually kind of allies on this season, more or less. Their rivalry would, come a couple seasons into the future. But in this one, Wes is still taking jabs at Kenny when Kenny takes a dive during one of the challenges, busts up his nose, and Wes thinks it's funny that Kenny isn't concerned about going into elimination or the poor performance. He's only concerned about his pretty little face.
Yeah. The fact that Tina and Kenny potentially just won this challenge, and the only thing that is on Kenny's mind is the fact that he's no longer pretty. Oh, tear.
Then the final 2 nominees, both from the final challenge. First, Casey, who has made it there against all the odds, against everyone talking crap all season long, most notably her partner, not cool Wes, as always. But she's got one thing to say to all the teams that are not there when she is.
To all the people who aren't here because of injuries or being kicked off by either Tina and Kenny or Wes and I just want to say, ha!
And then the final one is Darrell again after winning all the championships that he's racked up at this point. 4x4 champion, and he's reveling in it, and he deserves to talk that talk, and he does.
Real World Road Rules Challenge Fresh Meat Champions. Darrell and Aviv made it happen. You guys got the puzzles right. It all came down to the puzzles. So congratulations to you guys. You guys will be splitting $250,000.
Y'all got to get rid of me while you can. If I'm there and you ain't on my team, you ain't winning, damn it. History repeats itself.
Congratulations.
So of all those many nominees, it is crazy that at the end of the day, I'm going to actually pick the very first one. Theo in episode 1, I don't show up to their jobs at Starbucks trying to out-latte these kids. I just find that to be absolutely hilarious. And it's literally like the first confessional of the season, which is crazy that then becomes the quote of the year. And on top of that, the quote of the season. Theo will also win the Dan Renzi Award for the Confessional King or Queen of the season. While it didn't show up here in these nominees, Tina definitely made a run for this. Tina's confessionals were unbelievable this whole season long. Only the one gets her nominated for this specific quote, but her confessionals are as good or better than everyone not named Theo. But yet again, Theo, who I believe this is his second time winning this award, takes home both the quote of the year and the Dan Renzi Award for the Confessional King of the season. Then we move to the Iconic Moment Award. And this one is interesting because this season, while it has, some of the best storylines we've seen, some of the best set and, mixture of storylines, it's got all this great stuff about it. The one single spot this season lacks, and we'll discuss this now, and it'll be brought up again when we talk the full season grade here in a few minutes, but it doesn't quite have those singular moments that really, really, really stand out. The nominees for this category are more, they're great moments, but they're ones that kind of are a part of a larger story. That's an incredible, great, memorable storyline, but the actual singular moment of, don't really stack up to, Tanya throwing Beth's clothes in the pool, Julie trying to remove Veronica's harness, Coral, and Julie's fight, all the big moments we've had in some recent seasons past. But that doesn't mean there wasn't some good ones. It just means that none of these are probably making our kind of all-time final, whatever we do, 16, 32, whatever final best moments in challenge history, most memorable, iconic, infamous moments in challenge history bracket that we do at the end of this whole thing. None of these are probably making it, but they're still worthy of getting nominated for this season. Let's start first, just a really super fast run through these smaller moments that are kind of the honorable mention because they're just small things I love and deserve a quick shout out. Episode 2. Casey lying about eating kangaroo balls, sacks, and tongue. So this is after the first exile. Wes and Casey come back, and they decide in the car we should tell them something totally different than what it was. We should lie, and Casey gets into it. They decide in the car, let's say it was just eating. That's all it was, and it was kangaroo, and it was gross. It was like kangaroo balls and sacks and tongue. And one of them, I forget who, says do they even have balls and sacks, whatever? Is this going to make sense? And Wes is like, no one will even ask. It'll just be fine. No one's going to say anything, and who cares if they know we're lying? Casey gets so into it. It's such a funny moment. And she just stands with the whole crowd captivated, the whole place, saying we had to run here, eat this, run here, eat this. And this is what they taste like, and it's just fantastic.
Can you tell me how the competition was set up?
It was just us over here and then them at the other. We could see, but it wasn't
Yeah.
We have a really big advantage right now. Casey and I know what one exile is like, and we decided that information is for us. So we're gonna keep the truth quiet and then tell everyone else something completely different. Just get them all jumbled up because it can only help.
And there was a box, and it was kangaroo sack, kangaroo tongue, and then kangaroo balls. And it tasted kind of like jerky with a nice oozy ooze to it.
It is so much fun telling everybody that I ate kangaroo sack, tongue, and balls. We are just manipulating the heck out of them right now.
Then there is Tina and Kenny shadowboxing and busting each other's balls. These two are just such a perfect match made. They make so much sense as partners. They both understand each other, and they both kind of have that, I want to have a little bit of an abrasive relationship with my partner. I want to be able to kind of bust their chops and joke with them, but know that we're still in it together. We're still both going to try. There's many, many moments throughout the season where this happens, but this one was, one of the best.
Come on, bitch.
Oh, watch out, you got balls.
I got more balls than you, bitch, because you can't win.
Well, you're used to eating dirty.
Oh, as if you weren't. I saw your picture of your girl. I love chilling out with my partner, Kenny. He's mad hilarious. He gets my jokes, but he thinks that we're just gonna try to have as much fun as possible. He doesn't realize that this is a job, that you need to get in there and do it and love it and, try to win. I mean, you wanna win these things.
Third smaller honorable mention moment, then we have said it before, episode 6, Casey losing it on Wes with TJ just kind of leaning against the car laughing during the credit scene where they're clearly waiting for the van to take them back to the house. Love, love, love that. Episode 10, Evan, right before he eventually goes from bad hernia to you're gonna maybe die hernia. He at the bar they continue to go to joins the contest on the stage. He blows condom balloons. It's all great. He wins the contest, whatever the hell's going on in that bar. It's a fun little moment. Episode 11 sees two of them. First, Tina going absolutely wild on the bottom of a ladder. The daily challenge, that one, they have to each climb down a ladder on either side of this little boat hanging way above the water. And when they get to the bottom, they have to transfer ladders. And as the first team to go, Tina and Kenny have no idea how to get their ladders to swing next to each other. And Tina tries everything in the book to do it. And the little montage of every way she tried is just fantastic and hilarious. The credit scene then of episode 11, again, bring back the credits scenes. They're always so funny and interesting. This one was one of the best. Theo brushes his teeth and washes his hair in the pool to start. It sounds like maybe multiple days, not just a one-off, but Wes and Evan just sit and watch as Theo washes his hair in the pool, like a full, scrubs all the shampoo in, dips his head in the water to clean it out, then, brushes his teeth using the pool water to rinse. It's just hilarious. Their commentary on it's hilarious. The whole thing's great. And then Tina and Kenny in episode 14, when they come back from exile, their big upset win in exile, they hide in the trunk and they don't get out. They make someone, eventually it's Wes that comes from the house, is like, all right, who's going to come out of the car already? And he opens his doors. He doesn't see anyone. They're hiding in the truck. It's great. So all of those little small moments deserve honorable mention, but the four that get nominated for the moment of the season, first one is, I think I said episode 2 before. It was really episode 3. Diem revealing her cancer diagnosis to Derrick, and then obviously to the viewer as well. This is one of kind of all of these end up being Diem. We talked at length about her story is one of the biggest storylines of the season. This is probably the biggest, the initial moment of it is the biggest moment within it, but there's so many moments throughout, but that's the one we're going to give the nod for the nominee for the moment of the season. Then episode 6, the costume party. Every season's got to have one great party, or it's not a very good season. This one has a great costume party. There's Tanya in whatever the costume she's trying to go for, but with the cigarette hanging from the mouth and the red lingerie and the robe with it, has a moment. There's Big Easy and Katie as the hillbilly family being funny. There's a lot of great outfits going on, and that leads into Wes and Johanna having to make up. That whole little couple minute segment, that moment, that party is definitely nominated for the moment of the season. Then episode 9, Kenny votes for himself, and Tina loses it on him at the time of the vote. It's halfway through the vote. I believe there is 6 teams voting at this point. And the first, 6 votes go for Kenny and Tina. Tina, of course, says someone else. And there's still mathematically a chance that the 2 teams after them, which is Darrell and Aviv and Derrick and Diem, I believe, could vote with them and cause a tie. But Kenny's just reads the room and is like, it seems like it's going to be us, so I guess I'll just say us. And Tina can't stand it. It leads to a huge fight between them. Their fights are hilarious every time because they're kind of joking with each other. She's serious, but they're both able to laugh at it. A lot of insults are flying back and forth, but in a friendly, partner-like manner. The whole thing's great. Their relationship is hilarious throughout this season. And then the fourth and final nominee, and also the winner of the most, the iconic moment, whatever we call this, something different almost every season. The best moment, the iconic moment, the infamous moment, the memorable moment, the biggest moment of the season, the one that is the most top of mind for me when I first think of this season is Coral and Evan being told they have to go home. The fact that Justin Booth had to come in, has to tell them, the way TJ presents it, how bummed TJ is about the whole thing. The fact that they were dominating the whole thing coming into that. They were, the story, the team of the season up until that point. That moment sticks out to me more so than any other. A couple of the other storylines, DM storyline maybe is a little bit more top of mind, but if I'm thinking of just a singular moment, that one is kind of the first thing I see in my head when I think of this season is Justin Booth having to tell them to their faces, like, no, you are not allowed to continue. You have a serious injury. You need surgery. Stop. This is insane. I will remember that always and forever. that leads us right into the best episode of this season. This is a pretty easy one to give out. We're going to give it to episode 13, Diving In. That has the Deep Blue, the best daily challenge of the season. The game is really in the balance. There's a lot of suspense at this point of who's going to make it to the final, where the alliances are kind of been shifting. Has the Derrick and Diem fallen for each other? Kind of their romance hits a high gear in this particular episode. It also has Derrick essentially betraying Theo and Darrell, ending up his two allies end up in elimination versus each other. There's this incredible editing shot, well planned, well shot at the end of this, where there's two vans driving them back from the daily challenge, and Darrell and Theo are in one, Derrick's in the other, and Darrell and Derrick are right next. They drive right next to each other on the highway, and Darrell and Derrick are kind of looking at each other through the window, and Darrell's all pissed, and it's just this unbelievable shot that they got. So that episode, definitely the best rated. If I, though, had to give out a best 2-episode run, because this season, like many that have come before it, kind of, one round of everything happens in over a 2-episode run. Episodes 9 and 10 is the best 2-episode run, the best full round of the season. It's got great quotes, 2 great dailies. Evan and Coral, their injuries, and they end up in the hospital at the end of that episode. There's a lot of great Tina and Kenny stuff in that episode. There is the Tina and Kenny versus Eric and Katie exile that happens. All great stuff. So if I was taking 2-episode round, that would win, but on its own, standalone, episode 13 is the best episode of the season. On to the big awards. We've got our season MVP, but we've also got our most heated Rookie of the Year battle. Rookie of the season, excuse me. There's 2 seasons per year. So we got to call this Rookie of the Season that there's ever been. Usually that's a pretty quick and easy part to run through right before we get to MVP, but these battles mirror each other in a large way because, as we said at the start of this, 16 of the 24 people on this cast are rookies. So Rookie of the Year itself is really tough. Normally we just pick one winner, really, but we're going to do a top 5 and honorable mention real quick because it's basically the whole cast, so it kind of deserves it. Honorable mention goes to Shonda, Evan, Johnny, and Easy. Obviously, Evan, absolutely dominant in the time he was there. We mentioned before, him and Coral were on their way to an MVP candidacy if they stuck around long enough. Shonda kicked ass this season. Johnny, why Johnny and Shonda both kicked ass, why they never came back. Maybe they didn't get asked. Maybe they didn't want to. I don't know. But I thought they were both awesome and should have been brought back. And then, of course, Big Easy. Love Big Easy. He's fantastic this season. But the top 5 best rookies this season, 5th place, got to go with Aviv. I know she won. You'd think maybe the winner gets a little higher, but she's not super involved confessional-wise. Her and Darrell aren't super involved until the last third, really, of the season in general. So yes, she kicks ass throughout, but she's not super involved until the very end, when she proves that she was maybe the best woman there all along and is partnered with one of the best, if not the best male there all along. But she gets in 5th. Kenny comes in 4th. He's providing laughs throughout. Him and Tina, absolutely fantastic throughout. He comes in 4th. Diem in 3rd. An incredible arc, an incredible story that would go on many seasons of the challenge. Is one of the all-time greats. One of the all-time memorable stories and arcs in challenge history, as we said everything about it before. She comes in 3rd. And then the top 2, got to split this team up somehow. I'm going to go ahead and slot Wes in at 2nd. I'm giving the Rookie of the Season award to Casey, mostly because, this season was in a lot of ways about Wes. We're going to talk about that in a second. But Casey was the one who had to put up with Wes's bullshit when they both won those 5 finals, and they both came in 3rd place overall. So I'm giving the nod to Casey because she's the one that had to put up with all that shit from Wes, even if their record-setting 6 daily DQs between them fell a little more on Casey's shoulders than Wes. They didn't all fall on Casey's shoulders. There's a couple of those that were Wes just deciding, we don't got it today, let's just give up. So Casey is the Rookie of the Year, but that leads us to the MVP, which to a slight degree mirrors that a little bit, but the alumni really took it home. While there's only 8 true alumni, there was technically 12, but there's 8 real ones. They dominate this. The where were you portion of this got to go to Evelyn and Katie. Obviously, Evelyn, just because what we'd eventually know and come to know about her and her abilities in this show. Really stinks that she was out within 2 episodes on her rookie season. I'm sure we would have got a ton from her, but we didn't because we barely saw her. And then Katie was the only one that I felt like, we know she's an all-star. We know, she is, been in the MVP discussion for full seasons before and didn't get a lot of her this season. And so she falls into kind of, where were you? Why didn't we get a little bit more? And it just comes down to not everyone can be center stage every season. There's too many people, and this season had an amazing cast. Then the Gone Too Soon, we said before, we'll say it one more time. Coral and Evan, they were the top front runners for MVP through 10 episodes when they went home. They would have definitely, if not for the injuries, not only do I think they possibly win this season, at least make the final of the season for sure. They probably win one of them, if not tie somehow co-MVP, win the MVP of the season. Then the top 5 ballot. Let's get to the actual, and this is really, really difficult because of the way the storylines broke down this season and so many people having such big storylines for a big portion of the season, because, so many people did so well. It's really, really difficult to pick this out. And so we've got a couple dual nominees here. This top 5 is technically a top 7. But in 5th place, we got to go with my guy, Theo Von. His final season on the show, I believe he comes in the top 5 of all 4 seasons he's on. He is in the top 5 of the MVP voting, which is unbelievably impressive. He's just so good in the confessionals. He and Shonda kick ass in the dailies. They just can't solve a puzzle to save their lives, or else they very likely could have won this whole thing. But he comes in 5th place. 4th place is Darrell. Now, Darrell wins. He becomes the 4x4 champ. That is amazing. You'd think, that's a shoe-in for MVP, right? Not a chance. He does end up at the back half of the season, has some amazing quotes, gives us some great confessionals. But overall, as I had said with Aviv, Darrell and Aviv really aren't involved. They're not winning much. They're performing well, but not winning much in the first half of the season. They're really not involved of the big storylines. They're not really a part of anything to do with the Austin cast getting eliminated early. Evan and Coral, they're not a part of that. Diem and Derrick, Diem's whole cancer subplot, they're not a part of that. They're just a really good team that in the end proves to be the best team and wins the whole thing. He has some good quotes. He definitely deserves getting some votes for MVP, but he doesn't move any higher than 4th. 3rd, then, this is where it starts to get really tricky, and where it may get controversial. I feel like none of my MVP picks thus far have been controversial. I feel like this one may be the first one where I'm letting a little personal bias and a little bit of, if I don't like everything that you did on the season, maybe I tend to lean a different way. But in 3rd place, we've got a nominee here, ballot getters, Derrick and Diem together. Their story, is such a big part of the season. They perform so well. The 3 daily wins. They, have some good quotes and confessionals themselves. Diem's story is, a heartbeat of the season for sure. They are definitely, if you remove them, this season loses a lot, but I don't think they quite eclipse the next 2-3 people really that we're going to talk about. So they're in 3rd place as a unit. In 2nd place, then, this is where it gets a little tricky. This season really is about Wes in the end. He by far has the most confessionals. He and Casey together, and he is kind of the one doing a lot of the talking about them, even if it's kind of annoying and not a great look at a lot of the time. But Wes is kind of the face of this season. Austin is the face of the season to start it. He's the one remaining. He beats all the other Austin people. He gets all the way to the end. They're in the 5 exiles. His confessional counts are, significantly higher than anyone else. But I can't split him and Casey up really at the end of the day. I can't choose between them. I did it for the rookie of the season, but if we're being honest, if I had to pick from an MVP standpoint, I would pick Wes over Casey, and I might even should probably pick Wes to be the actual MVP of this whole season. But I can't overlook the fact that he does talk down to her so much, and it's not great. And I love that he learned from this, and I love the human being that Wes is today. He's one of my absolute favorite people in the world of the challenge. I root for him so much. I'm so happy he just won All-Stars 3. Sorry if that's a spoiler for anyone listening. Apologies. I know it's only been a couple weeks. Maybe you're not caught up. But because of that, I can't give him the win, and because of that, I have to slot Wes and Casey in at 2nd. And the winner is someone who I haven't talked that much about this podcast, but I truly believe when looking at this season as a whole, if you're going to remove one person, the biggest impact is Tina. Tina is a tour de force this season. She is, even though she is not the main person in any of those subplots, she is a part of all of them. She is kind of the ringleader of the, obviously we're going to get Austin out first, right? She is, the one who, even though she's good friends with Coral and Evan, and her and Coral, Evan and Kenny end up being good friends. She knows we probably got to do something about them. She's the first one to say how unbelievable it is that they're leaving the game, and that opens up a spot for a worse team to do better. They are the ones that kind of turn the tides on Derrick and Diem near the end of the season and cause some, rifts between them. They are comedy throughout. They got mentioned a lot in the quotes and especially in the moments of the season and the little moments throughout the season. Every couple episodes they show up and they have great stuff. Her commentary on all the other storylines in the interview, she has, the third most confessionals of the season, carries it in that way. They get to the end, they get second. I know that I might look back on this and retroactively think that I've got to give this to Wes or I've got to give this to Diem or Darrell, but I find myself in the hardest decision I think I've had to make of any of the season MVPs. I've got to give it to Tina. I think that without Tina, this season really falls apart in a big way. They needed the one of the 8 true alumni veterans to really hold this thing together. And, Derrick kind of, as he should, and it's a beautiful storyline, but kind of Diem, overshadows a little in that partnership. Darrell's really in the background. Coral is doing that to some degree along with Tina, but then, exits. Theo's doing it a little bit, but is more just that confessional guy and not so much all overall. He's not quite as comfortable in this season as he has been in ones past. Tina is the star of stars in this season. She's in her element. She's got the exact perfect partner for her. All of her, comedy to shine, everything about it. Tina is the MVP of the season. And, maybe I'll feel differently tomorrow, but today that's how it's going. And that's where it's going in the record books. With that, we come to the end here. And the biggest, most important thing we've got to do, we save for last. That is the season grade. We've got to give it out. Its overall grade, place it in the pantheon for all time. And this one's right up there. So let's break it down. As we always do, we got a female cast grade, a male cast grade, a sport grade, and a show grade. The cast is 2 parts. We grade both parts. The entire challenge itself is the 2 pillars, the sport and the show. We grade both of those. We add those all up to some degree, average them out, give us our overall grade. Place it in the pantheon. Let me pull up the list so we've got things to compare it to, and here we go. Let's start with the female cast first, and as we've been doing for a few seasons in a row now, we break the cast down. Heavy hitters, solid contributors, duds. On the female side, in the heavy hitters category, we got Tina, Coral, Katie, Tanya, Diem, and Evelyn. Now, as always, we're grading this on retroactively, kind of looking back. In the moment, do we know that Evelyn's going to have this huge challenge resume and huge presence in the challenge later on? No. We see her for 2 episodes. We barely learn anything about her other than she seems to be a badass. And that's about it. But we know looking back, as far as people on this show that have huge outsized impacts that are heavy hitters in the challenge world, all of these 6 women fit that bill. Solid contributors then, Johanna, Aviv, Casey, Shonda, and Lynette. The only dud, I apologize again. I know I recently had to do this on an All-Stars season, but Melinda and Danny will also be on the dud side, on the male side. Just really, it doesn't work for her in the flagship challenge house. It eventually, way later down, present day, works for her much better in the All-Stars world, making a better impact, a value add player there. Doesn't really work in this season or in the couple seasons she would be on. So we get 1 dud, 5 solid contributors, 6 heavy hitters. That is a really good mix. And importantly, Tina at least makes it to the very end, and Diem makes it almost to the very end. So we get, and Coral, dominates early on. So we get some of those heavy hitters being the faces of the season. So with that, we give the female cast grade a B+, which puts it not quite. We've had a couple A- and we've had some other B+, a bunch of other B+. So it's not the best female cast ever, but it's right in, it's battling for maybe the top 5 spots. It's somewhere between 3rd and 7th of the 12 seasons we've seen so far. It's really, really solid, but there's still room for it to be, in that all-time, that A ranking, which is where the male cast finds itself. The male cast gets an A-. We'll just hit the grade right from the start. Heavy hitters list: Darrell, Wes, Derrick, Theo, Shane, Kenny, Evan. Pretty incredible. Solid contributors: Big Easy, Johnny, who again should have been brought back, and Ryan. The 2 duds, Danny and Jesse, just don't really work. Danny's challenge career is one that gets, I think wrongfully how much he kind of gets hated on, but I'm still myself putting him in the dud category. But while this breakdown, 5, what's that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 out of 12 are heavy hitters. That's awesome. Not quite all-time levels that, a previously like an Inferno 1 cast or Inferno 2 cast would have been. But the great thing about this that elevates it from maybe that high B+ into that A-, into that A territory, is the fact that these people basically go home in reverse order of, our heavy hitters. Darrell, Wes, and Kenny are in the final. Derrick, Theo, and Shane are the last 3 eliminated, and Evan right before that. So those 7 heavy hitters are the 7 last guys standing, which is pretty incredible and helps boost the score a little bit. On the sports side of things, we talked about some of the best dailies we've had. And then while I really, really like the Exiles, they can't be graded super high, even if they were really good and competitive and fun, because, they are this different thing that's a little bit different than the eliminations we would know and love over the years. So we're giving the sport grade a solid B. It's really, really good across the board. There's a couple high-level moments. There's a couple that kind of wane and kind of duds of dailies because of the whole Exile right after daily thing that we talked about. So we give that a B, which still overall compared to a lot of the seasons before, we're on a streak of, this is the 3rd straight season where we're at a B, or 2nd straight. The one before Inferno 2 is a B+. We're starting to hit our stride with the athletic side, the sports side of this show, but there's still a whole new level that can be reached, and that will probably be reached in seasons to come. On the show grade side, we got so much good stuff, and we end up with a B+ on the show grade. I really was torn between A-, B+. I'm kind of leaning towards actually making this maybe an A-, but that would put it tied for the best, show grade ever. And I kind of wanted there to be some difference between this and the Inferno 1. And the difference really is just, it's missing those, those iconic moments, those true iconic moments. And like we talked about when we did that award, without those, it's kind of tough to put this in that true A range. But if it would have had just one truly singular iconic moment, I think this could have been an A+ show grade, because we got amazing romance storylines. We have Derrick and Diem, sweet, wonderful, wonderful to watch. Theo and Lynette have a romance this season. It's interesting. It's a full storyline. Wes and Johanna, Danny and Melinda obviously coming in as couples. We find out in the reunion there's a bunch of hookups that were happening that we kind of get alluded to during the season, but we don't totally know, confirmed till the reunion. But romance side covered. Betrayal side, obviously, he's not doing it himself, but Wes has to beat 3 other Austin cast members, including his best friend's fiance and girlfriend. That's, pretty crazy and interesting. Derrick, what he and Diem to Theo and Darrell and Aviv and Lynette, what they have to do there, that we get some real juicy betrayal. Even, Tina celebrating Coral and Evan going home a little bit falls in that. We get the great storylines, everything we talked about: Diem, Evan and Coral, Tina and Kenny being gold, the Austin exodus early, all the storylines we talked about. So it's all great, all where you would say this has got to be in that A category, but we have to keep it down just at that B+, because there isn't that one singular moment that stands out. And if we have 0 moments that would make the all-time great moments in challenge history bracket, I have a hard time putting your show grade. The ceiling feels like it's then capped at a B+, which it does then reach. That leads us to our overall grade. And we are going to go ahead and give it an A-, which ties it for first place officially with the Inferno 1 and the Inferno 2. Both also received A-. I believe this season deserves to be in the A range, deserves to be in that all-time great tier. If we look at each letter grade from minus to plus, as its own kind of tier. And as we talked about every time with our grading rubric, like A's are really hard to come by. Anything in the A territory, really, really hard to come by. You got to be great. Anything in the B territory is an awesome season of the challenge. That's really fun, really good to rewatch, really good stuff in the moment. C range is like, hey, there was some good. There was also a lot of bad. This was kind of average. It didn't set the show back in any way, but it didn't really propel it forward, didn't gain any viewers, anything like that. And then D range is like, you fuck some stuff up. This is pretty atrocious. God forbid anyone ever got an F. I don't think that's, I mean, if it was possible, it would be the last season of the show. But I believe this is the third season that we've covered of the first 12 that deserves to be in that all-time great category. I don't know if I had to say 1, 2, and 3, Inferno 1, 2, and Fresh Meat, how I would break those out as the absolute best of the best. I already forget what I said on the Inferno 2 recap podcast. If I decided between 1 and 2, which one gets the edge. But looking at these, of those 3, I would probably still, maybe if I had to split it down, Inferno 1 maybe gets the top spot for me, but this one's right there. It's tied for first with those 2. It is in the top tier along with them. Those 3 of these 12 seasons are the right one, and it really is those missing that iconic moment that keeps it from being not just tied from first, but being first overall out of these 12 seasons, because it is just, at the end of the day, it's the exact right mix of really good teams, good competition, suspenseful. You don't know what's going to go down. Interesting strategy, great storylines, amazing storylines, and a great breakup of, we got this storyline for 4 or 5 episodes, then this one takes over, then this one takes over. And they're all interesting and good, and none of them take too much of the oxygen of the season. There's room for a bunch of different stuff to breathe. There's a great cast. It's just good everything across the board. And it's as good as we've gotten thus far. Got here in a little different way than the Inferno 1 and Inferno 2 did, but it gets an A-, and it becomes, one of the top dogs in the pantheon, in that top tier, that when all is said and done, it's going to be in the discussion for, top 5, top 10, best season of all time. We'll see once we get 37 plus All-Stars plus whatever else deep where it ends up, but it'll certainly right now slot somewhere in tier 1, the top 3 in all time. Is one of my favorite seasons for sure. With that, we have covered it all. One of my favorite seasons ever is in the books. Thank you so much for being here, listening along. I know these recaps and rewatches are super duper lengthy podcasts, but it's for a reason. I love this stuff so much. I know you do too, and each one of these seasons deserves our time and attention, and we weren't around in the podcasting world to talk about them in the moments. We're doing it now. Thanks for listening. As always, if you want to get in touch, if you got feedback about these shows, if you've got opinions about this season of Fresh Meat or any of the others we've covered or will be covering upcoming, hit me up at Challenge Historian on Instagram. Follow us there to get in touch for extra content. Follow, subscribe this podcast feed so you don't miss an episode. We'll be back with Challenge USA coverage later this week. We'll be back with the duel about a week or so from now. That'll be next up, moving along in the Rewatch series. So a lot to look forward to. Fire up those Paramount Plus subscriptions. Get to binging. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. I will talk to you again soon. Peace.